10 seconds.
90.7 KPFK, Los Angeles.
And now, our feature presentation.
This is Mike Wallace. You're listening to Harrison.
Live from Hollywood, it's Harrison. With Harrison reporters stationed in every country, every capital.
News update.
Your Harrison headlines brought to you by INN World Report.
It's the top of the hour on Go Harrison, and I'm Mercy Malik with your reality check. As Norway grieves for the victims of twin attacks that killed at least 75 people last Friday, Anders Behring Breivik, the Norwegian arrested for the massacre, appeared in court today, charged with detonating a car bomb in downtown Oslo. At least 7 people died in the blast in front of the oil ministry, which also targeted the office tower containing the headquarters of Prime Minister John Stoltenberg. Following the blast, Breivik, dressed as a police officer, traveled to a children's summer camp on an island near Oslo, gathered the teenage campers together, and opened fire. He then proceeded to hunt down and kill dozens more, continuing the murders until police made it to the island. Most media outlets initially blamed, quote, Islamic terrorism for the incidents, with Rupert Murdoch's UK Sun headline even reading, quote, Al-Qaeda massacre, Norway's 9/11, end quote. The accused culprit, however, subscribes to extreme right-wing political doctrines, is virulently anti-Muslim, and today in court claimed his actions were meant to save Europe from a Muslim Marxist alliance he believes is attempting to bring down European Christendom. Salon.com's Glenn Greenwald notes that Breivik's rants directly echo comments made on Murdoch's Fox News network by Glenn Beck, who on his daily program repeatedly warned of an impending Marxist Islamist world takeover. It's 1 minute past the hour. The Washington Post reported yesterday that money from a multi-billion-dollar U.S. transportation contract in Afghanistan has made its way into the hands of the Taliban, citing an unreleased investigation by the U.S. military. The Post said the probe found evidence of, quote, involvement in a criminal enterprise or support of the enemy, end quote, by 4 of the 8 companies contracted by the U.S. to provide transportation services in Afghanistan. It also said contractors were involved in money laundering, profiteering, kickbacks, and fraudulent paperwork. The paper reports that all 8 companies are still working on the $2.1 billion contract, designed in part to promote Afghan businesses. In one case, intelligence officials traced $3.3 million through a series of subcontractors and an Afghan National Police commander, which was eventually delivered to insurgents in the form of cash, weapons, and explosives. It's 2 minutes past the hour. And finally, most Japanese citizens advocate the resignation of Prime Minister Naoto Kan, but 70% of the Japanese public still supports Kan's plan to transition the country to entirely non-nuclear power. A survey conducted this past weekend by Kyodo News Agency showed 70.3% supported Kan's policy of ending nuclear power entirely, while 66.9% think he should leave office by the end of August regardless. The premier is under intense pressure to quit, mainly from political adversaries who accuse him of having bungled Japan's response to the tsunami. But Kan's skepticism about boosting nuclear power in the quake-prone country has also set him on a collision course with pro-nuclear lawmakers, both in the conservative opposition and within his own party. With 2/3 of Japan's 54 reactors shut down for regular checks, the country is currently suffering a power crunch in the sweltering summer months, a situation which Kan's detractors are attempting to use to their advantage. For Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7, this has been Mercy Malik with your reality check.
For details on all these stories and more, go to INNWorldReport.net.
GoHarrison.com.
What's new about Tiger Woods?
Michael Jackson.
Elvis Presley.
O.J. Simpson. Abandoned baby. Order now.
Harrison. Talk show. Random. Political. Outrageous. Philosophical. Analytical. Passionate. Sunsets. Roadkill cooking tips. Open-minded. Swordsman. Bent. Resolute. Chocolate. Bushwhacker. Belt buckles. Investigative. Companion. Fearless. Call in. Piercing the cloud of mainstream entertainment. Live from Hollywood. It's Harrison.
It is 4 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. Welcome and happy Monday. As we come to you with so much that has happened over the weekend, really huge shifts on Earth. In many ways positive, in many ways not so positive. If you're a gay person, you can now get married in New York. We're going to take a look at that. That's a huge major issue. Meanwhile, Marcus Bachmann grabs his crabbed organ like a club in despair, waving it silently, hoping his own reparation therapy will repair it back to a turgid state someday. We're going to get into that with our guests, what that means and how that sentence was even formulated in extemporaneous speech without a dictionary. We're also going to be taking a look at closeted gay politicians, and we might even probe the debt ceiling as it gets higher and higher, or lower and lower, and completely hit the delete button on the United States of America and the economy of the residents of Earth. Hopefully that's not going to happen. My opinion is there are way too many rich people who are not going to want to be wiped out overnight and have to stand in line for warm soup with the rest of us. So trust me, it ain't going to be a real issue. It is a political mechanism simply to privatize the very things that you rely on, the Postal Service and all the rest of it. As Grover Norquist taught us, when in doubt, drown the government in a bathtub. There, splash, done. All right, without further ado, I am thrilled out of my mind. I am sitting around in, well, I have a George Bush doll. I was rubbing it earlier. That's how thrilled I am. I still have, from last week, Terrence McNally gave me an invitation to the George and Laura Bush.
Oh, my.
If you, by the way, you can watch us live on GoHarrison.com, GoHarrison.com live video. You will see this invitation of George and Laura. They're having a barbecue. I have the invitation here. I'm hoping that what's actually on the grill is not going to be that of a cow, but it's going to be bovine nonetheless, possibly starting with the first letter L. We also have with us two esteemed guests today. I want to say hi to David Bender first. And David is a longtime friend of mine, a longtime ally, a longtime progressive, a longtime biographer, an author. He can juggle. He can count to 7 on one of his 3 arms. He is amazing.
I feel deformed.
And you feel
introduction,
you feel
actually.
deformed?
Yeah, I do. Now that's and by the way, the Laura Bush barbecue will be Marcus Bachmann on the grill. Actually, slowly turning on the spit. The soup is always cold. It is for rich people. The soup is bisque. It's Bachmann bisque, actually. So we know how this is going to play out, and I'm so glad you've set the stage because this is the week that the world ends.
Yes, it is the week that the world ends, and we're going to also get, just coming up in a couple of minutes, we're going to talk to a GOP presidential candidate who is sitting here in our Go Harrison solar studio, in our micro studio in West Hollywood, Fred Karger.
And if I may say, it is an honor to be sitting next to Fred Karger, the first openly gay presidential candidate, to my knowledge,
in the history of humankind,
of this country.
Yes.
And it is a great honor to see him and to have him here today.
Yes. Well, I guess you have to say hello now, Fred, because you know there's basically nowhere to hide anymore in this little tiny room.
You're out, Fred.
I'm out of the closet. Hey, this is great to be here, David. A real privilege to be sitting next to you and followed your great career and all you're doing. And Harrison, we've been talking about this. It's a joy to be on the show.
It's my pleasure. It's a treat. We have presidential candidates in here virtually every week, so I know it's really kind of no big deal. But glad to have you in here, my friend.
Is this the same seat that Nixon sat in?
Actually, no, no.
But Nixon had to give the chair back. Actually, that's the way that works.
We are looking down the road to do a live remote from the Nixon Library. Or no, Bush spells it library, right?
Yes.
The Bush but from the Nixon Library and the Bush Library, I think it would just be bizarre, perverse, and terrific at the same time. Especially, I think, in the Bush Library, are there actual books in there? Because one would have to read.
They're picture books.
It seems unlikely.
And I'm being unkind. 9 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you. You're listening to Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 FM in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California. We have in with us GOP presidential candidate, openly gay presidential candidate, Fred Karger. Next to him, David Bender. We have Mercy Malik in with us. We have Geoff. And we're going to take a look at Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And let's start on that. Basically, in about 60 days from today's date, roughly in there, gay people who are serving in the military can actually be gay people serving in the military. I know you have to think about that. but that's what we're doing.
As opposed to the fact that there have been gay people serving in the military since
Charlemagne, Alexander the Great.
And you should see what Charlemagne wore in those battles. But
well, I have a Napoleonic skirt.
You have a Napoleonic complex. But the real question is, what is going to change in terms of actual day-to-day experience for the gay men and women who have had to live with this knowledge that at any given point, no matter what they did, Don't Ask, Don't Tell has never been in place because all of the rules of Don't Ask, Don't Tell have never been followed. People who did not tell, were not asked, were still forced to leave military service all the years this so-called policy was theoretically governing the military. What we now know is that in 60 days, Leon Panetta, the President of the United States, the chiefs of all the branches of the service have said, we will now never force anyone to hide. Let's see what that means, frankly, and I don't want to be a glass half empty kind of guy, but I wonder what that will mean in practical terms. When people do start talking openly, is the military culture still prepared? The surveys say yes, but people say a lot of things in surveys.
Well, right. You know, we know not only from the surveys, we know from other countries that it is brilliantly efficient. We also know, and I was at something, HRC, by the way, if you don't know, Human Rights Campaign is a very large gay fundraising organization. It's a political action committee, really.
Size isn't that important.
It is for them. Trust me. Their Wi-Fi, when you're in Washington, D.C., blocks away, you pick up their Wi-Fi that says HRC. It's all about size, girth, and bandwidth with them. But I was at a fundraiser about a year ago, and they brought in Ronald Reagan's former Deputy Secretary of Defense. And he was talking about getting gays in the military. But here was his rationale. And we'll ask Fred about this because Fred Karger is a GOP presidential candidate. His rationale is, well, you know, it's a volunteer army and we're running out of warm bodies. And if you guys want rights, what a great way to put your teenagers. I mean, I hear half of them are living on the streets and they get kicked out of their houses and they have nowhere to go. They go to Hollywood and sell their ass. He didn't put it quite that way. Did I say the word? What he
meant,
a
donkey.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A donkey, indeed. What he meant was that if you offer fuel to the fighting machine will grant you humanity. So there's two groups of people here. I'm a pacifist, so I don't want to churn anybody's teenager and turn them into, meat cannons. That's just me. Here I am wanting to share my toys in the sandbox of fun. But then there are other people who are more pragmatic. Do you think, Fred Karger, that this is really more of an instrument of getting warm bodies as foot soldiers, or do you think that the military has been sitting around saying the homosexual is a valuable person and we've always thought civil rights was most important?
Well, no. I think what's happened is we're seeing the public has shifted so dramatically for gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual rights that the military and the Congress has followed suit. You know, you have over 80% of the public that supports allowing gays and lesbians to serve openly. I'm very concerned. We were talking about it. You know, it's a very hostile environment. I don't know if I'd want to be a young Marine, man or woman, going into the Marines right now and being out. It's so very unwelcoming, and they're going through the sensitivity training and all that, but I'm very concerned, and I hope there's safety in numbers, and I hope that people will be protected, and that this long 18-year wait for taking discrimination out of the U.S. military is ending. I'm excited about that. I can't believe it's taken so long, but, you know, we're a relatively young civil rights movement. I have great faith in that and marriage and a lot of other issues that are on the table.
And we're going to talk about that in just 1 second. It is 14 minutes past the hour. We have traffic coming up with Jeff Thomas in just a handful of minutes. News at the bottom of the hour with Mercy Malik here on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California. Harrison with you, your new best friend, streaming live through GoHarrison.com. You can see delicious color pictures, frame by frame, of our two incredibly handsome guests, both of whom are calipigious beyond belief. Ah, David.
It doesn't show up on the screen, however.
No, because you're sitting.
No, you need to look it up, folks.
You need to look it up. It's well worth the venture. We're talking with presidential candidate as well, Fred Karger, GOP presidential candidate, openly gay, Republican, presidential candidate. Now, I don't suppose Michelle Bachmann is phoning you a lot, Fred, and saying, welcome to the team. Or is she?
We've kind of gotten off to a bad start. She and I, in particular, her husband. I mean, I don't like her misrepresentation of her business, which is these 2 counseling offices they have with over 28 psychological counselors in Minnesota, counseling and advising Christian youth, and I'm very scared about what's happening there. I've challenged her husband, Marcus Bachmann, who is a psychologist and co-owner with Michelle, to come out of the closet and debate me on their gay reparative therapy they practice there. I want to discuss this issue. There's a misconception that you can pray away the gay in many religious circles, and it's religion-based bigotry, and we need to correct that. And I want to debate the subject.
And if I may, I don't believe, Fred Karger, that Marcus Bachmann, who portrays himself as a psychologist, is in fact a licensed psychologist.
Like Dr. Laura, she knows about hips. She is a hip person. She rubs hips when they get sore.
She's not terribly hip.
And not anymore. And therefore gives life-saving advice on how you should act in the bed while interfrasticating.
Well, guys, she hears the voices.
Excuse me?
I think that's all they need, right?
The voices tell them, and this is, as we now see with someone who may join you in the field, Rick Perry, governor of Texas, has heard the call. You hear these things. I'd love to ask Fred Karger, if I might, what was the call that you heard? what motivated you to be
you foul devils? Yea, in the name of Jesus.
And astonishingly, and I think quite wonderfully so, as a GOP candidate? What was your motivation, sir?
Well, I'll tell you, David, and when I started my gay activism exactly 3 years ago, right about today, by organizing boycotts of the largest donors to the Yes on Prop 8 campaign, I came out of the closet publicly at 57 years old, having been keeping my deep, dark secret to myself all those years. And when I did it, I said, I'm okay in my life now, but I'm doing it for younger people because I know how hard it was to grow up gay, and I know how different I felt, and I had no role models, and I wanted to help make life better for a whole upcoming generation of young gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual kids coming up. And then I've heard from a variety of people. Even I got a great email from an 82-year-old man who said, Fred, you're not doing this just for younger people. You're helping me. I've been in the closet my whole life, and I can't tell you how wonderful it is to see an openly gay man running for president. So that's my motivation in here. And I'm very concerned, obviously, about the direction of our country, and I'm in it for that, to bring some bipartisan flavor and getting along and this optimism back.
And that's a really good point at 18 minutes past the hour, 2 minutes until live traffic with Jeff Thomas. Fred, you're running for president, and I could see 60 phone lines lit up and all these tweets coming in about, but he's a Republican, You just said he was gay. No, he just said he was gay. He just said he came out, he's running for president of the United States as a Republican and a gay man. Wow, I think, wow, comma, people would write. Wow, comma.
Well, I'm the wow candidate. I've grown up in the Republican Party, which has changed dramatically in my 61 years. It's not the caring party, the moderate party, the Theodore Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, Dwight Eisenhower party. You know, the parties have shifted. The Democrats used to be the ones that led segregation. And so I want to bring that civility back, and I want to bring that openness back to politics in general. And I think the Republican Party needs to move back to the center, or we're going to be extinct.
So is part of what you're doing, Fred Karger, then, is to shift the Republican Party back in? When you're on the inside, you get to actually show up at their meet and greets. I have been uninvited now for way too long.
Really?
I go under false names a lot, eat the food as much as I can, but I'm only getting the invitations, shall we say, interstitially. But you can go in, and they actually pay. I mean, you're a presidential candidate. I've seen you on CNN, on MSNBC, all over the place. So your voice really does count as a counterbalance, as a counterweight to somebody like Michelle Bachmann.
And I've been welcomed into the Republican National Committee by the 3 leaders, Reince Priebus, the chair, the vice chair, and the chief of staff. I had a full-on meeting, my communications director and I, with the 3 of them. I've met with all the state party chairs in the early states. I've been on some very conservative radio shows like Jan Michelson on WHO radio. I've been on there 7 times. He even said on the air one day, he said, I don't like gay people, but I like you. And so if I can help put a face on the gay community to let people meet a gay person that, knowingly for the first time as a Republican who has very good Republican credentials, I think I can change some hearts and minds out there.
And you mentioned a Priebus, and Mercy, you drive a Priebus, right?
I did until somebody ran through a red light and killed it.
The RNC doesn't get good mileage. It does not.
I shout out for the CNGs. That's what I drive now.
All right, everybody, we're going to go to Traffic with Jeff Thomas in just a second. We are talking to David Bender. David is really a world-famous author, an incredible biographer. Merv Griffin's biography, just off the tip of the tongue, speaking of people who were enchanted.
Merv was enchanted and almost as good a conversationalist as you. Didn't quite have the Calipigis chops that you bring to the game.
CCs.
I want to say before we have to go to traffic that people who want to find out about Fred Karger's campaign can do it at fredkarger.com, and that's Karger with a K, fredkarger.com. People should check this out. This is a very, very important moment to have an openly gay man running credibly for the presidency of the United States. And we owe it to him, whether we're Republicans, Democrats, or Independents, to give him at least the support for the decision to run.
Right. And
that's very important.
When you think about having a set of big ones, it's one thing for him to be under the big tent with the Democrats, right? Just come on in along with everybody else, but to barge, and when I say barge, I mean barge into the Republican Party and say, I'm here, I have a different political agenda from you, I want to do this, this, and this, and by the way, I'm openly gay, pass the salt. That is enough to cause many of their goosebumps to turn into very large berms. So I thank you for that bit. We're going to continue to talk to David Bender. We're going to talk to GOP presidential candidate Fred Karger. But first, a little live and local traffic with Jeff Thomas.
Go Harrison. Completely unsponsored, common sense commuter traffic.
It is 21 minutes past the hour. This is your Go Harrison live and local traffic report on KPFK. Let's start in Sherman Oaks on the 101 South. Traffic is slow from the 405 to the 134, and then from Santa Monica Boulevard clear down to the 110 freeway. Northbound lanes are slow from the 5 to the 10, or excuse me, to the 110. In the Sepulveda Pass on the 405 South at Mulholland, Caltrans has got the off-ramp closed for roadwork. Traffic is backed up to the 101 freeway. Orange County looks pretty good though. The 405, the 22, the 57, and the 55 all look clear. Moving northeastward now to the Cajon Pass on the 15 South at Kenwood. The northbound on-ramp is closed as crews work to put out a brush fire. Traffic is sluggish from the 138. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, keyword Go Harrison. For Harrison, I'm Jeffrey Thomas on KPFK 90.7 FM Los Angeles, 98.7 FM Santa Barbara.
Live from Hollywood, it's Harrison.
It is 23 minutes past the hour. Harris with you, your new best friend. You are watching Go Harrison on GoHarrison.com. We are streaming live video for your entire family, especially for the kids and any grandmother over the age of 80. A computer? You're kidding. Well, that's the way we do it. We are a full-figured gal here. We're talking to David Bender. David is a noted biographer. He's also an incredible political pundit. His career spans back many, many years, going back when he was a child, literally.
Chester Alan Arthur.
And also, helping the original Bobby Kennedy, whom you also helped, the current Bobby Kennedy. You go back so far. You have seen all of it. You have seen so many different politicians transform from closeted people to public people. And I would say, I'm crediting you for this, and I'm not making it up. You really get the credit for holding hands and gently leading people out onto the real stage of congruency.
Well, you're very kind and erudite, but here's the truth of it. There are cycles in our politics, and Bobby Kennedy's campaign in 1968 was a sea change in our politics. It didn't. The wave didn't crest, frankly, until 40 years later. When Robert Kennedy ran for president in 1968, he predicted that in 40 years, an African American, they were called Negroes in 1968, would be president in 40 years. It would take America 40 years. He got it exactly right.
Yeah.
And Barack Obama's campaign was, in many respects, about that unfulfilled promise that Robert Kennedy was talking about bringing the country back to its basic values, not the false values of the Michelle Bachmanns and the Tea Party crowd, the real values that Fred Karger represents, which is having the courage of your convictions, standing up for what you believe in. The person that Fred Karger reminds me of is someone who I worked with now 8 years ago, Howard Dean. And Governor Howard Dean, who had grown up a Republican, became a Democratic governor of Vermont, was the first governor in the country to sign civil union legislation. We're now celebrating the fact that New York is the 6th state to have marriage equality. It was only a short time ago, a decade ago, that only one state had civil unions.
And the Republican mayor, Bloomberg, was the one who officiated personally on Friday.
That's right.
I mean, this is really huge stuff, and it really is a huge change.
I want to make one point, though. Howard Dean went out on a limb as governor of Vermont to do this, and he faced a very difficult re-election bid in 2000. I'm not a Vermonter, but I said at the time, all of us around the country owe Howard Dean a debt of thanks. And when he ran for president, it was the same thing. Was he going to be marginalized as that, gay-loving governor of Vermont?
Right.
If so,
Right.
It was our duty to say, thank you for standing up. And that's what Fred Karger is doing today.
Yeah, it's true. And I went out and I bought maple syrup. And
you were doing your part.
And I
You
gave
did your part.
Mercy, who's vegetarian and vegan, I gave her sticks
Don't
of cheddar.
spread those lies.
I gave her government cheese.
I've had many the block of government cheese in my days.
And,
I appreciate it. Thanks, Harrison.
By the
Taking
way,
me back to my youth.
We were going to have Stephanie Miller on with us today. She's extremely busy, but she sends her regards and really wanted to join us today and talk about this. Another person who, at a very high position, has most recently become congruent with her nature in a public sense.
She came out within the last year.
Yeah.
And, good on her. And again, Stephanie Miller, who grew up in a traditional Republican family.
Well, her father.
Her father ran for vice president with Barry Goldwater. It was Goldwater Miller in 1964. And to Fred Karger's point, the Republican Party has left its roots. The Republican Party of Abe Lincoln was the party that ended slavery. The Republican Party of Teddy Roosevelt was the one that fought big corporations. This Republican Party wouldn't have Ronald Reagan or Bill Miller or Barry Goldwater in it. And the fact that Fred Karger is fighting to bring that party back to sanity, I have to laud you, sir. I think it is an extraordinary battle. It may be an uphill battle, yes, but it is worth fighting because it's the morally right thing to do.
And we're hearing, I'm looking at, I don't know how many tweets here and Facebook stuff going on, but people are thrilled that a Republican candidate is actually standing up for the things that people would call progressive values. People would really realize as being libertarian, perhaps, in many ways. That you're about, trying to do the right thing, whatever that is, which could take different shapes, different forms, and different everything. And the fact that you also have decided to be who you really are is something that we don't see in a lot of politicians. They're something that they're really not. They put on a costume, if they will, much as an attorney puts on a big suit, goes into court, and you get frightened by his suit, right? It's a suit of armor. And you've taken your armor off to show us who you really are. And I think in the year 2011, anybody who shows us who they really are is somebody at least we can begin to trust. So Fred Karger, as a Republican presidential candidate, we look at the Bachmanns, we look at the others, we look at Bloomberg having now officiated the marriage, we look at how we could change this country. Before we go to news in 2 minutes, maybe you could give us the quick upload for people who are just learning of you a little bit more right now. What is it you'd like to see America become?
Well, I'm hopeful, as David mentioned, we go back to the roots, not just of the Republican Party, but of this country. It's so polarized now. People are just in it to get elected or reelected, or move up. And we got to get rid of that selfishness. I love that photo after 9/11 when every member of Congress practically came out on the steps of the Capitol. If we need to recapture those moments, those glory moments of working together for the common good. It's so disastrous in Washington. They're playing politics with the debt ceiling. We can't do that. We need to come up with a kind of compromise. I hearken back to Reagan, who was a conservative Republican from California, but he compromised a lot to get a lot of things done. He forged a friendship with Tip O'Neill, the liberal Democrat Speaker of the House at the time. They became friends. They got things done. And that's what Washington needs to do. Look at the polls on that. The public is so frustrated with Washington right now and the selfishness there. So, we need to talk about getting along, and we need to bring back that optimism to this country, and we can do anything we want to do.
we are capable of doing anything we want to do, but I'm curious, and this is a point that Harrison made. The Republican Party has not been very welcoming of dissent. We saw what happened, as a matter of fact, at the Republican convention. An openly gay Republican member of Congress from Arizona came to the podium, and the delegations turned their backs on him at the time. Well, how do you feel, aside from having met with the chairman of the Republican Party, what about some of the more conservative elements? Are they willing to include you in debates, for example? And what's the threshold for that?
Well, you know, I was greeted in Iowa on my second trip last May by the Republican National Committeeman who sent me a nasty, nasty threatening email that he was going to work overtime to abort my candidacy. Overall, though, the Republican Party has been very welcoming. And don't forget, the leadership in both parties tend to be the extremes. And particularly in the Republican Party, they've worked very hard, you know, the far-right social conservatives to take over the party apparatus. But what we're seeing now is a gigantic shift of the independent, undeclared voters. In New Hampshire, where I'm spending most of my time, and I've just leased a house for 7 months, 42% of those registered voters are independent. And it's a gay marriage state, and it's the second least religious state in the country. And overall, it's approaching 40% nationally. So, you know, people are getting sick and tired of the Republican Party, and I want to bring back the civility and the moderation so we can bring back some Republicans. I'm speaking on colleges all over the country to bring younger people in, not just to the Republican Party, but into the political process, because I think that's important. And they don't come in with all the prejudice and hate that a lot of our elders and grandparents do. So, you know, I'm excited about that. I have great hope. It's a pendulum. It swings back and forth, and I'm encouraged.
We're going to talk in just a moment with GOP presidential candidate Fred Karger. We're going to go to news in just a second. We're going to talk in just a minute about what is the end game of this current cabal of Republicans. They're doing this stuff that is causing everybody to wince. It's causing reverse peristaltic surges throughout the public. It's horrifying. What is the end game? You're on the inside. We're going to talk to Fred in a minute. Also, we're going to hear from Rosie O'Donnell. A little 1-minute thing, little talk with her about coming out and the state of affairs today. So that's coming up in about 15 minutes, Rosie O'Donnell. We've also got in studio right now in our Go Harrison Solar Studio in West Hollywood, we've got David Bender, an incredible political pundit. And I know pundit is icky when applied to some people. With you, it's the word that it ought to be.
No pundit intended.
No pundit intended. An incredible author, a huge activist. I mean, a man about town, and he wears 100% cotton, so we vote yes. Also, GOP presidential candidate Fred Karger is with us. But now a little news and traffic with Mercy Malik.
Harrison. From Washington prowlers to corporate crawlers. News update. Your double grind of headlines.
Go Harrison News Time is 32 minutes past the hour, and I'm Mercy Malik with your reality check. The scare over irradiated Japanese beef deepened last week as the number of contaminated cattle believed to have been shipped for consumption rose to nearly 1,500. Beef cattle in 9 prefectures are thought to have been fed straw contaminated with radioactive cesium before being sent to slaughter. Local authorities reported that straw feed showed radioactive cesium readings of 43 times the government limit. The animals were shipped to 45 of Japan's 47 prefectures, and some of the meat has already been consumed by humans. The contamination surfaced earlier this month when elevated levels of radioactive cesium were found in beef from a farm near the Fukushima nuclear plant. How shocking. Last Tuesday, the government finally banned shipments of Fukushima beef a full 4 months after the meltdowns at the nuclear plant. The Japanese government has faced repeated accusations of negligence for its failure to establish centralized testing of farm produce and for having prematurely lifted earlier bans. It's 33 minutes past the hour. Hundreds of gay and lesbian couples were married yesterday in New York as that state enjoyed its first day as the 6th and largest in the U.S. to legalize same-gender matrimony. Reuters News notes that Connecticut, Iowa, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, and the District of Columbia already allow gay marriage, and Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, and New Jersey offer civil unions for gay couples. By contrast, 39 other U.S. states, including California, have explicitly banned same-sex marriage. Supporters hope New York's move will encourage the repeal of the so-called Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA, a federal law signed in 1996 by Bill Clinton, which which blocked same-gender couples from receiving basic rights afforded heterosexual mates, such as joint tax filing, spousal health insurance, and Social Security survivor benefits. Happily, President Barack Obama has pledged to support the repeal of DOMA. But in the meantime, officials in New York are anticipating an uptick in state revenue to the tune of an estimated $400 million over the next 3 years alone, as gays and lesbians celebrate marriage equality in the state, proving that sometimes doing the right thing can pay off, and swiftly. It's 34 minutes past the hour. And finally, label this last story under Always Best to Double Check. The AFP reports that a 50-year-old South African man woke up in a mortuary's refrigerated storage unit yesterday after family members and undertakers had mistaken him for dead the day before. South African health spokesperson Sidwe Kupela explained, quote, his family thought he had died. The family called a private undertaker who took what they thought was a dead body to the morgue, but the man woke up inside the morgue on Sunday at 5 p.m. and screamed, demanding to be taken out of the cold place, end quote. Upon hearing and seeing the man begging to be released from the frigid compartment, the mortuary attendants naturally assumed that he was a ghost and fled from the premises. Upon later returning to check on the suspected specter, the morticians finally realized that the man was indeed living, breathing flesh and belatedly called an ambulance. Capella cautioned, quote, doctors, emergency workers, and the police are the only people who have a right to examine the patients and determine if they are dead or not, end quote. And noticeably absent from that list, morticians. For Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 Los Angeles, 98.7 Santa Barbara, 93.7 San Diego, and 99.5 Ridgecrest China Lake, I'm Mercy Malik. You can be my friend on Facebook and send me news tips for your reality check.
News update. Harrison.
It is 37 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. You are listening to Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California. We are streaming live video as well via GoHarrison.com. One word, GoHarrison.com. You can also shoot emails and such and click through to get archives and podcasts. And this is happening on through Ustream, which means tomorrow this entire program will be viewable for you if you don't have a computer handy on YouTube and via DirecTV and Dish Network. So it's available to everybody as long as you're polite with your remote control and don't aim it at anybody, given those radio frequencies and all that jittering of the little cells in our delicate brains, whose consistency is like toothpaste, if you didn't know, by the way. We were going to have on our panel today Stephanie Miller, who sends her regards and regrets, but wants to make sure that we said hi to you on behalf of her. The Stephanie Miller Show, which is the #1 morning progressive show here in the United States, locally on AM 1150 from 6 to 9, and she has recently come out as well and has lots of views on this. And David Bender is with us right now. David, you know very well as a great pundit, as a great humanitarian, as a great author, as a great physical scientist, as a nuclear scientist, as a man about town.
I'm glowing.
Reader,
Enough already.
Medium builder. Yeah, medium.
And let's also point out that Stephanie Miller, Hal Sparks, and John Fugelsang are on tour. They are on tour. Go to sexyliberal.com, by the way. And could there be a better place to go than sexyliberal.com? You can see these people. I am sitting next to a lot of sexy liberals, and even you can find sexy libertarians as well, as it turns out.
And I think this is critical because in here right now, in our Go Harrison solar studio in West Hollywood, where, by the way, we have a roof full of solar cells powering this entire thing. It's pretty exciting. Pretty novel, pretty radical. We've got Fred Karger, GOP, political, presidential, openly gay candidate, sitting here in studio. And what's nice is David is one of these guys who, since his mother crowned and grunted him out to expose him to life.
Is that my poor mother?
Push. Since he has been on the earth, he has devoted his, and obviously I love you, David, I do, keep going on with these encomiums, but you have devoted your whole life to helping the humans on our little orb. So for you to be jazzed about Fred Karger, this is a big deal. And I just want to say that again. It is a big deal.
It is a huge deal.
And
it's
I put
important
you
to
next
say
to
that.
a Republican presidential candidate who's openly gay because I wanted to see what would happen, and I knew you'd like this guy.
Sparks fly? Now, here's the truth about it, and it is what I said earlier, that there are times when this isn't about party, this isn't about ideology, this is about the values that make us strong as a country, and that has to transcend party. So I'm a Democrat. I'm going to remain a Democrat. I am going to support President Obama for re-election, but I will tell you right now that any of my friends within the sound of my voice who care about restoring the dignity that this process used to have when I got involved, when you started working in politics, but when we were growing up, I remember everyone would say that any boy or girl could grow up to be president, and parents would be proud of that idea.
Sure.
You do not find parents who now say, God, I hope my son or daughter could grow up to be president.
Unless we take all the porn off the internet that has my son or daughter in it.
Well, it isn't that. They don't aspire to that.
Yeah.
They aspire to be Kardashians. They aspire to be in the porn on the internet. And what we have in Fred Karger is someone who understands that what the American ethic really is about is service, is about caring, regardless of party label, caring about the good of the country and leading by example. Running as an openly gay man who inspires not only letters from 82-year-olds, but 18-year-olds. Harvey Milk said that he wasn't running just for San Francisco. He was running for a 14-year-old kid in Altoona, Pennsylvania, who had to see a picture in a paper of a faraway city he'd never get to, San Francisco, to see an openly gay person. Fred Karger represents the vision that Harvey Milk gave his life for, and we owe it to that. We owe it to ourselves, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, to acknowledge that and to encourage this man in his bravery.
41 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you. You're listening to Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, and all over the place. Streaming live at kpfk.org and video streaming right now through goharrison.com, where you can see presidential candidate Fred Karger, who is sitting in our solar studio right now. You can see David Bender. You can see Mercy Malik. You can see Geoff, and you can see me because I'm actually making a small appearance here as well. And we're talking about sort of the future of the country. And we're going to ask Fred Karger now about what is the end game with the current really rabid cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs Republican GOP folks. My grandmother was a Republican. She believed in recycling. She believed in not leaving, poisoning the other people's water supply. She was an old-fashioned Republican, right? The kind that we refer to as your grandfather's Republican. But these current bunch, whether it's the Boehners, whether it's the Mitch McConnells, whether it's the Bachmans, they have a plan that we're told we're not capable of understanding. But you being on the inside, you running for president, what is their end game?
Well, they're just trying to make a name for themselves and get elected, and they will say and do anything. I mean, we see it in Mitt Romney, who used to be a moderate when he ran for Senate in Massachusetts against Kennedy, and for governor even. Well, now he's moved completely right. And I don't even buy the legitimacy of some of these candidates on some of these issues. They'll move to the right to go to Iowa, and then others have divided the state or the states, and they're going to New Hampshire. So, I don't think it's too credible. I think that the old Republican Party needs to come back. Don't forget, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed with 8 courageous Republicans in the United States Senate overriding their leadership, and 15 in the House. We just saw in New York State 4 Republicans courageously, it was mostly all Democrats, but one passed in the state Senate there, gay marriage. So, we've got to.
Ted Olson, who here in California, Bush's former Solicitor General, who argued the Prop 8 case here. On behalf of the gays.
And has been a tremendous advocate for civil rights. And,
and is fighting it all the way to the Supreme Court. Ted Olson and David Boies are taking that case all the way to the Supreme Court.
The dream team. Talk about a dream team. We finally got the best lawyers. And, don't forget Barbara Bush, the daughter, and Laura Bush, and Cindy McCain. And, there are a lot of the Republican women that are coming out, leading the way. And so, I think the times are changing. I'm very encouraged by the Republican Party in certain degrees. There are certain people coming out. I hope to bring this voice of moderation. We're 2 other libertarians I'm running with, Gary Johnson and Ron Paul, that or somewhat supportive on civil rights. So, there's hope. It's the Tea Party that scares me. I hear they're libertarians somewhat, but I think they're mostly just the far right, rebranding themselves as the Tea Party. So time will tell.
I have been supporting the Koch brothers personally, and I need to be transparent here. I need to let everyone know what I've been doing. One of the products they manufacture is toilet paper, is bum fodder. And I have been caressing my person with their bum fodder and thinking of David Koch each time. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Another great visual.
Sell a lot more of that product with pictures on it. Actually, if you think about it, if the Koch brothers weren't so shy, they would actually endorse their own product with an image on each square. I want to say also, just adding to what Fred said, the Tea Party, which calls itself, going back to the Founding Fathers and the Constitution, plainly hasn't read anything that it knows as much about history as Sarah Palin or Michelle Bachmann, Paul Revere, warning the British. We understand all of their roots in history.
It was Paul Revere, the cookware.
That's right.
Revere.
It was Revereware.
Yes,
it's exactly right. But what we do know is that these people have been funded not only by people like the Koch brothers and your support for them, but they've been funded by people like Dick Armey. They've been funded by Washington lobbyists. And these people, some of whom are sincere, I believe, are actually being used as props to prop up a right-wing agenda. And when it comes down to it, where Fred Karger has gone, he's gone into Iowa, a state that actually did approve same-sex marriage. Its Supreme Court did it unanimously, 7 votes, all 7 justices.
And then all 7 got punished?
No, three were recalled.
Yeah.
In Iowa by the voters, but it was done by the same people who are controlling this Republican nominating process in this party. So that's what we're fighting against. I want to give a shout out to a place where people can get this information. You know it, I know it. Progressive Voices.
Yes.
Progressive Voices is a place, and you go to progressivevoices.com, or more to the point, use your iPhone or your Android application and download the Progressive Voices app. And if you do that, you will be able to follow the truth about what is really going on and why people like the Tea Partiers are actually only being used to further a right-wing agenda. Progressive Voices.
And that's both iPhone and Android.
It is now.
It's the whole soup, cat, and pizzas, by the way. It is 47 minutes past the hour. Rosie O'Donnell had a quick chat with her about the notion of coming out. What does it mean? What is the activist component? And going to present that to you right now. This is Rosie O'Donnell telling us about how her process went.
Which is one of my favorite channels.
It is mine too.
If Harrison wasn't one of the main correspondents, I'm not sure I would watch.
That's exactly the right thing to say. Did you know that?
Well, I'm here to help, Harrison.
It's your extraordinary intelligence, your prescience, your foresight, your foreskin, which you don't have, and all the rest of it that's magnificent.
Well, thank you very much.
And do you realize that when you came busting through the closet door, the kindling flying up in the air, you are one of the founding mothers of the movement in this current era?
Well, you know what? I guess I am, which is hard to sort of take in when it's just you. I've sort of lived my whole life, and people always knew. There was no real boyfriend that I had. There was no, I thought everybody knew. So when I came out, I didn't really know how much it would change my life, but it really, I think, changed everything. I think I stepped away from being possibly a one-dimensional figure into a full human being in the eyes of the public, and it's a much easier way to live.
And imagine also...
Go Harrison. Completely unsponsored, common sense commuter traffic.
It is 48 minutes past the hour. This is your Go Harrison live and local traffic report on KPFK. Let's start in Sherman Oaks. Traffic is still slow from the 101 to the 405. On the 101 rather, from the 405 to the 134, and again from Santa Monica Boulevard all the way down to downtown. In East LA on the 5 North at Calzona, a crash is blocking the middle lanes with traffic backed up to the 710 freeway. Finally, in the Cajon Pass, crews are still working on putting out that brush fire. Cajon.
What does that mean?
Cajon.
The Cajon Pass?
The Cajon Pass.
The Ball Pass?
The what?
The Ball Pass?
Cajon.
Cajones?
That's a different word.
Oh.
It's similar, but...
Is it like Cajunga? Look at those Cajungas.
Cajunga.
Sepulveda.
Film at 11.
Sepulveda.
That's what the GPS calls Sepulveda.
I know.
Thank you. They're still working on putting out that brush fire. The 15 South is slow from Kenwood to the 138. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, keyword Go Harrison. For Harrison, I'm Jeffrey Thomas on KPFK 90.7 FM Los Angeles, 98.7 FM Santa Barbara.
Which means I'm very well hung.
Go Harrison. Don't be left out by the media. Become the media.
All through the week, you witness it, you think about it, you have no place to put it.
You stupid liberal.
Simply call 310-737-TALK. Introducing the Harrison Hotline Rant Line.
A message for his show.
That's Los Angeles, 310-737-TALK. It's our Harrison Hotline Rant Line, free for you.
Uncle Harry, no cow. After your little segment there on meat, I don't even want to eat chicken. I'm going to wither away. All right, have a good night.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you can now purge your pithy perceptions with plosive prophylaxis.
Harrison, I don't know you and you don't know me. They are the words of God.
It's our Harrison Hotline Rant Line, free for you, and for you to use freely anytime. Please remember to keep it clean and tidy for your fellow listeners. That's the 24/7 Harrison Hotline Rant Line for you at 310-737-TALK.
Preventing truth decay.
Truth decay.
Live from Hollywood. This is Harrison. Live from Hollywood. It's Harrison.
And it is 51 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. Welcome. Happy Monday. Having the distinct pleasure and honor today to talk a little politics and break down to the basic nubbin, to the molecules, the atoms, and the quarks, the reason behind what is going on. Instead of just endlessly looking at what, why of the what is much more interesting. So we have with us today a panel of two amazing people, and that would be David Bender, who is a noted historian, a noted author, a radio host, a biographer, really everything, a ubiquitous ubiquitor.
And master of none.
And a master of nuns. And there's not a convent in the world that doesn't say hi to him.
There we go.
Next to him is Fred Karger. Fred Karger is a gay GOP presidential candidate, the first ever in
Since James Buchanan, actually, who was our first, his historians suggest, was our first gay president.
But not out.
But not openly.
Well, and
Republican.
Interestingly enough, George Washington and Alexander Hamilton, if you read the love letters, and it was known as a romantic friendship, there was no palliardization going on. There was no probing of the nether bits that we know of. But they, oh, I love you, I miss you, my heart twangs like an oyster vomiting up an urge of, this was just that flowery.
I hope that was a direct quote.
Yes, Washington and Hamilton.
Yes,
Yeah.
Washington and Hamilton.
This explains Aaron Burr. It was it was all jealousy. It wasn't policy. That's what it was about.
And Fred Karger, who's running for president, GOP candidate.
I sent George Washington love letters too.
Well, I know. I try to wear his hairdo often, and then I look at Barbara Bush and say, nope, she gets the gold star on that one.
Oh.
So, Fred, tell us how. But that was not meant to be funny. I was really serious about that. Fred,
I rescind my rim shot.
As you run into other Republicans who are going to be not above you because you're running for president of the United States, but Congress, Senate, how do they deal with you? Do they know what to do, or do they see you as a distinct threat in some way, as though you're going to expose them for charlatanry?
Well, I've met a wide variety, and even my fellow candidates have gotten to know me. We're on the same circuit. I did a radio show in Iowa right after Rick Santorum, and then about a month later, we were chatting each other up at this New Hampshire Republican Party dinner. And
how does that go?
He's actually a very pleasant guy, and when I'm, he of course knows who I am and what I'm doing and everything about me, and so it's kind of interesting. But he's very cordial, and then he actually was kind of telling too. He stepped back after we were visiting for a couple minutes. Goes, "You're having fun, aren't you?" And very kind of resentful. I said, yeah, actually I am. And, I think a lot of these candidates for president and every other office don't really like what they're doing. They have an end game, and it's a little frightening. But I am in this for, not just a good time, but to make a difference. And I think you shouldn't be running for office unless you're really enjoying yourself.
And Fred, you can have a good time without going to Tiffany's too, unlike Newt Gingrich, right? I mean, I think part of the fun for you were at a fundraiser in Beverly Hills yesterday. You make appearances everywhere without bodyguards. You have a very approachable feel. And at this point in our political timeline, we really need somebody who feels open and available to us. We really need somebody who is not echoing, especially in the Republican Party, who is not echoing the current wisdom or selling that particular brand of Kool-Aid, which is about privatizing everything. And one of the things as Americans, if we want to get together and buy a huge group plan called Social Security or Medicare, we should be allowed to. We should be allowed to pool our funds as voters in a democracy. They seem to be very undemocratic. And much more of a kleptocracy or an oligarchy or an oiligarchy, really, when it boils down to it.
There are a few oily politicians in there. Yeah, I've been taking on big oil too. I ran a commercial. I was not invited into the New Hampshire debate, and so I made a commercial that ran in Iowa and New Hampshire throughout both states, taking on big oil, particularly ExxonMobil. We shot it at the the Mobil station, La Cienega and Beverly, and I'm taking on Rex Tillerson. I've boycotted some big businesses before, and I'm seriously looking at boycotting Exxon and Mobil and bringing down gas prices. So I'm not afraid to kind of break away from the Republican, tradition of supporting big oil and some other institutions I'm going to take on. I'm excited about that.
And Fred makes a very important point that ExxonMobil, the world's largest corporation, the largest corporation in the history of the planet, which makes a profit of $5 million every hour, 24/7, 365 days a year, $5 million an hour. When you think about what they use, what they spend with that profit to influence, now that Citizens United allows them to do it without restriction.
Citizens United, the case, the Supreme Court ruled that basically corporations have arms, legs, teeth, and lungs.
They are persons now. Corporate personhood has been affirmed by the court. But Fred makes the exact point. This is not just about electoral activism. As important as it is to vote, you need to vote with your pocketbook. You need to tell these people this is the only place that affects them. They don't care whether it's a Republican or Democratic Congress anymore. They care if they lose profits at the pump. And so if you can hit them where it hurts, if Americans were to vote economically by withholding money from these corporations, we'd have an impact.
It would really help. And we've run out of time, and I apologize. I got a scooter, by the way, 80 miles to the gallon. It goes 70 miles an hour. There are lots of workarounds we can do. I pay $3.80 a week now to go everywhere. It's beautiful. It's a miracle. I want to thank you, David Bender, for joining us. I want to thank you, Fred Karger, openly gay GOP presidential candidate, and I wanted to make sure that your voice was heard. Very important. Your website, fredkarger.com, FredKarger.com, fredkarger.com. Harrison with you. We will see you next Monday here on Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles. Thank you, David Bender.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Fred Karger.
Love you, Harrison.
Thank you, Mercy Honey.
Thank you, Harrison.
Thank you, Geoff.
Absolutely.
And thank you, D'Angelo. And
thank you, listeners.
Welcome to our new general manager at KPFK. We are truly blessed. All right, everybody. Have a great week.